What's up, everyone? Welcome back. I am here to break down another training session, this time as compared to last time and the time before that. It's just going to be me training. So I'm going to take you inside of what was going through my head as I went through this particular upper body pushing session. There's a lot of triceps, shoulders, and chest. Mixed it together in a variety of different ways. So I'm going to talk about formats. Hopefully give you a couple fun stories along the way. Getting things started off with a pre-fatigue pump or a warm-up, and this was basically two movements designed to drive a lot of blood flow to the shoulders, combined with some skiing to get the heart rate up and the blood flowing. I chose the kneeling landmine press and the Powell raise because I was going to be doing some overhead pressing. I've talked about this before on the channel, but the half kneeling landmine press is just one of the best ways to sort of train and prepare the upper body for overhead pressing, in my opinion. I love the position that it gets us into, gets me into. It allows me to press vertically, but not fully vertically. It's kind of at an angle going forward. And because of the way that the landmine feels and the stability of the landmine at the top of a press, I can kind of lean into it some. Lean into it, which helps open up my shoulder. Getting the shoulder blades to move, for me, especially overhead, is just a great way to keep my shoulders healthy. So I would encourage you to mix in some kneeling presses, specifically with the landmine. It's great. You can also do landmine seated presses and landmine seated on the floor presses and standing. So there's a variety of different ways to do it. The Powell raise also was another movement mixed in here. I love the Powell raise just because, again, it works on that shoulder blade retraction. So with the landmine, we're kind of working on that protraction or the upward rotation. With the Powell raise, I'm getting that the arm is coming across the body, and I'm getting a big stretch. This combination just really, I think, warms up the shoulders, gets the shoulder blade moving, the rotator cuff muscles firing, and then that's going to help for me going into the upper body push movements of the day. Okay, jumping right into the next stage of training, which is jerks. I've been doing about 4 weeks of split jerks as a training build, and today I chose to go off the blocks. Now, jerks are a movement where you're using a lot of leg drive. In this specifically, I'm doing split jerks, so I can get a lot of weight from my shoulder to overhead because I'm using a leg drive. I'm using like kind of a full body, powerful lift overhead. To bring that same weight back down onto my shoulders is a bit rough. It's anybody that's done heavy jerks that you have to bring it back down onto your shoulders will attest to the fact that this hurts. It doesn't feel great. And in the sport of Olympic weightlifting, when athletes complete a clean up to the shoulder and then a jerk, they're not required to bring the bar back to their shoulders. They often just drop the bar onto the floor. So they developed jerk blocks to basically aid in the training of the jerk so that you wouldn't have to bring the bar all the way back down to the floor and then have to pick it up to your shoulders. You could drop the bar from overhead to about shoulder height, and that way you could get more training reps in without the wear and tear on the shoulders. I was building up to a heavy set of 3. I got up to 265. Was like, I'm going to try 275, did 275, and didn't even get 1. So my shoulder wasn't feeling super solid and stable at the top, so I just switched out and went on to the next phase of training. So the next phase of training is now, I did some speed lift. That's speed strength, where I'm using power and speed in the jerk. Now I'm going to something that's a bit more what we'll call slow strength, the strict press. The strict press is something that I also have been building for a number of weeks in a very linear progression. So in week 1, I did 3 sets of 10 at 110 pounds. And then week 2 was 115, and week 3 is 120. So I've been building that by 5 pounds each week. And I chose 110 as a starting place, not by just some arbitrary number, but in my first week of training, I had done a little testing to sort of find out what was a hard set of 8 for me. And then based upon that hard set of 8, I dropped down by about 10 pounds and did 3 sets of 10 from there. So I've been building, and here I am, and you can see some grimace on my face while I'm doing these sets of presses. I have arrived at week 4 where the weights are getting pretty heavy. These 5-pound increments that I'm jumping each week have started to get quite hard. And that's the case with linear training progressions. You might be at a beginner intermediate phase of training where you're seeing these easy 5 to 10 pound incremental jumps in your weights every single week, and it's working well for you. And that goes on for 6, 8, 10 weeks. Maybe you're a more advanced lifter like myself, and after 3 weeks of 5-pound incremental jumps, you're like, well, this is getting pretty tough. So here I am with that the 4th week of training, and I think I'm doing 120 pounds for 10 reps. And yes, it is getting super tough for me. I know I have one more week of this progression coming, which just so happens I did today while we're recording this. And it got exceptionally hard. And it's definitely my last week before I have to take a deload from that particular movement and that progression, because I just can't get the weight to go up any higher with the quality that I'm looking for these sets. Done with my presses, thank goodness. Time to bench press. And bench pressing has always been something that I've loved to do, but in the past number of years, I just haven't found it to be very comfortable on my shoulders. I haven't loved it very much. And so I kind of took bench pressing out for a while, and now I've kind of come back to it looking for ways that really feel good for my shoulders and really focus on what I want from a bench press, which is a chest contraction. What are the positions that give me the best stretch and the best muscle stimulation in my chest? My bench press PR once upon a time, best ever, was 335. I did that for a close grip bench press back in 2015, I would say, maybe 16. And the reason I did close grip bench press back then was just because that was how I always trained. It had the best carryover for CrossFit. Close grip bench press really mimicked, pressing like overhead and burpees and dips. And so close grip bench press kind of was the best carryover exercise. So I got strong in that movement, and that's why I had my PR as a close grip bench press, but 335 was my best ever. Could I get anywhere close to that now? Absolutely not. So I don't even mess with it. What I do is I've been focusing on an angle, the low incline, about a 15-degree bench. That has felt really good for me getting a stretch in my chest and putting my shoulder in a position that feels really comfortable. I've also been utilizing what we have at the gym here, which is a Smith machine or a Smith attachment to our pull-up structure or our squat rack, which to me is just another way of adding some stability. If you look at where I'm actually bringing the barbell in every rep of the Smith press, it's coming down to like the top of my chest. There's actually an angle here where when you're looking at me pressing, the barbell is almost like on my throat. Nate's filming from behind me, and you can see like the bar is literally almost at my collarbone when it comes down. Now, if I were doing a conventional barbell and I was pressing the bar that high up on my chest, I would have a hard time feeling really stable and strong. But in this particular setup, this Smith machine, I'm capable of, still loading up in a decent amount of weight and getting a great contraction with that higher on the chest bar path. And that's just allowing me to get a really good stretch and an upper chest contraction. And this is just working for me for today, and I'm exploring this movement for a 4 to 6 week training cycle. All right, then we're moving on to cables. With these cable machines, what I was doing was a superset of shoulder raises, front raises, or like upright rows, something in between an upright row and like a shoulder front raise to really just target the delts, the shoulders, right? We just did pressing and bench, so it's like overloading the shoulders here. Then we're going to superset that with an incline bench tricep extension from overhead. And actually what's cool is that you're seeing me do the tricep extension overhead with cable, and then I swapped out to a kettlebell. So here's 2 different options on how to hit a similar movement. Are they the same? Not exactly. The tension and the sort of the what you feel from a force sort of production standpoint with the cable feels a little bit different than the kettlebell, but they're quite similar, and you could interchange them. If you didn't have a cable machine, grab a kettlebell, hold that neutral grip, and do those tricep overhead extensions. For For the upright row that I'm doing with this bar, this kind of cable bar situation, you could do that with dumbbells. You could do that with a barbell. You could even do it with both hands on a kettlebell. So there's ways of taking, machines or free weights and kind of interchanging them. And again, they don't give you the same exact stimulus. They might give you slightly different stimulus, but you got to find, again, what works best for you. And once you've maybe exhausted the cable variation for 4 to 6 weeks, maybe you want to switch to the dumbbell variation just to get a slightly different stimulus if you want to use it in your training continuously. Let's go! The final piece here, we have a conditioning piece, which I would kind of characterize this as a pump conditioning format that I use inside of the Persist Training Track pump. And these conditioning pieces are also meant to be very focused on a specific kind of muscle group or movement pattern where we're going to really get quality contractions and not worry about just going fast. So here's the quality contraction. I'm doing kettlebell floor presses. And then the conditioning portion of it is me going and jumping on a rowing machine and rowing for 25 calories. So I'll do 10 to 12 kettlebell floor presses right into a 25 calorie row, and then I rest. And I start a new set every 3 minutes. This is true interval weight training. You do a weight training movement to not full exhaustion and failure, but somewhere fairly close, and then you jump onto a cardio machine, in this case the rower, and you go for 60 to 75, sometimes even 90 seconds of work before you take a longer rest and repeat. I did this for 5 sets today, and why I love this kettlebell floor press movement. Now, the floor, one thing we talk a lot about on the channel and at Functional Bodybuilding is, hey, let's really train big, long ranges of motion, get maximal stretch into a muscle group or into a joint, and then press or squat or whatever pull out of that range of motion. And by getting that big, deep stretch, we lengthen tissues, we create muscle damage through the full length of that muscle, which is going to help us build strength, hypertrophy, and if you're controlled about your movement around those end ranges, you can build really strong connective tissue and strength and stability in the joints. It's all good for, the durability of your body over time. Now, the floor press, you're like, well, there's not a lot of range of motion there, and that's very intentional. So what that does is it kind of places the shoulder and the tricep at an interesting place in the range of motion where it's very hard to overcome that starting point. It puts a lot of tension on the triceps, it can put a lot of tension on the shoulders, and in particular when using the kettlebell and where it's placed on the wrist and the forearm, because of where the kettlebell is on the forearm, that I find that when you're lowering down, you can get those arms, those forearms, much lower down towards your waist, and then the kettlebell offsets that where the hand placement is, which just means that like you're able to bring your hands a bit lower and put a lot more tension on the shoulders and the triceps. So I just like that as a loading tool for this particular movement. You could do it with a barbell, you could do it with a dumbbell, get the similar stimulus, but I happen to really like it. All right, last but not least, here's my one tip for the rower. So the foot strap, where that foot strap, the strap that goes across the top of your foot, should it be right across my toes? Should it be right across my shoelaces? Well, the cue that I give people is those foot plates adjust up and down. And what you want to do is you want to adjust the foot plate so that that strap goes right across the widest part of your foot. When you do that, when you adjust the foot plate like that, that is kind of the optimal position so that you can get pressure through the entire foot as you drive back. You want to be pushing through a very flat foot. Is it okay for your heels to come up when you go in for the catch or all the way in? It's okay for them to come up a little bit, but you want those heels to get down immediately, as quickly as possible, so that you can drive through a flat foot. You can get even pressure through the entire foot. That's going to allow you to have the most force production going back. So use that tip when you're rowing, and hopefully all these tips and stories that I shared today were of interest to you, and they're going to help you look at your training differently, look at your training in a way that's going to make you get more out of it, right? The more you know, the more potential you have to bring great quality to the training sessions and get stronger and get fitter and look better and enjoy the process for a long time to come. If you like this format of me breaking down the session, comment below. Give me your questions that you have. And of course, smash that like button. Help us spread the message. We'll see you next time.